All right, so in this video, we're going to be taking a look at creating a little patch. And what we want to do is we want to test this little guy right here. Now, if you want this file, just drop us an email. The email address is in the listing description below and say, hey, could I have the Marrow border stitch file? And we'd be happy to send the original Inkscape file to you so you have this same exact little stitch. So this is a stitch for a marrow edge. And we're going to see this kind of come to life here in a moment. So when we're doing our patches, it'll give us just a little bit different type of border. So let's go ahead. And what we really want to test out is will this stitch out properly? That's number one. And what we're going to be stitching on is a Ziploc bag. I've never seen a patch stitched on a Ziploc bag, but I asked myself, hey, is it possible to stitch a patch on a Ziploc bag? We're going to find out. All right. So let's go ahead, grab our ellipse tool here in Inkscape, hold our control key down and click and drag. And what that control key does, it constrains it to a perfect circle. Okay. And so now we'll switch over to our selection tool, which is right here. And we'll come up here and let's change our unit value to inches. And then let's just enter 2.5. So our patch is going to be 2.5 inches. Okay, now right now we're not going to put anything on our patch. I just want to see, first of all, can we embroider this or not? All right, that's kind of step number one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that circle that we just created and we're just going to duplicate it several times. You can see here I just randomly duplicated it numerous times. And we're going to select all those and choose path, object to path. Okay. So now it's no longer an ellipse, even though it really says it is. It's no longer an ellipse. It's an actual path at this point. Okay. So now we're just going to move on here. And what I want to do is on one of these circles, I'm going to turn off, let's just turn off the visibility on all those others. And let's just deal with this one. Okay, so you can see here, we just have the one. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a path effect to this. And it is going to look pretty interesting. So we're going to select this and we're just going to copy it. So Control C, or we could right click and choose copy. And then with our path selected, we're going to come over here to this drop down option and we're going to choose path effects. And when we choose that, we are going to choose the pattern along path. Okay. And now we have to apply this to this. And the way we do that, right here, you see pattern source. There's several options here, but this is the most common one I use, which is paste path. So we're going to select that. Now you can see something has changed here. It looks kind of weird, and that's because of this, the pattern copies. We want to start with repeated. Okay? Now, when we do choose repeated, you see there is a bit of a gap here, okay? And for our purpose, that's going to be okay. We're going to try and do something a little bit different here to fix that, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is if we just double click on it, you see we get this icon here. And then we get this one too. Okay, so we get both of them. But we want to be on this one, and you see where it says handle. What we're going to do here is we're just going to come in here and we're going to click and drag. See if you see that one? That's not the right one. It's kind of one or the other. It's difficult to tell which one's which. But this guy here, we can actually move and everything moves. You see how we changed that look? All right. So what I want to try and do here is I'm going to just double click again. See how we just added another node? And what I want to do here is move it till you see how that filled in. I just moved it a little bit and now that moved in. Okay. And that's kind of what we want to do. Now that's going to change on every single size circle we do. Okay. But what I want to do now is look up here and you see here that the width is 2.671 and you see the height is at 2. It's not quite exactly perfect. So we're going to undo that. I do want those to be perfect. 2.671. Okay? As perfect as we can get. So now you can see the width and the height is supposedly the same. All right? Now what we want to do is we want to change the spacing. We need these stitches to overlap one another. So we're going to come right in here into spacing, and let's start with start with 0.2, and let's just watch those stitches move ever so slightly. Did you see that? So now our gap has gotten bigger. So we don't want that. So what we have to do is enter a negative. Negative 0.2. Okay? And you see our gap got a little bit bigger, but that's okay. But we're not there yet. Let me explain when I say we're not there yet. We need this overlap to be a little bit more. So let's say negative 0.4. You'll see what I'm talking about here when we get close. Okay, now we're getting close. Now we're getting close. We're not quite there yet. Let's do negative 0.7. We're getting close. See, that's probably about right. So you see that little triangle there? We do want that. All right, so that's about right there. All right, so now you remember we added that little node and we have this one. We're just going to nudge this ever so slightly and see if we do get to a certain point, maybe we have to make it a little bit smaller. Because I want, what I'm looking for is for the start and end to connect in the same way. I want to get that connection as close as I can. So I'm going to back up here before I started all that moving around, and let's go ahead and use a different option. I want to close this. This is pretty close, but I want to close it. So instead of repeated, we're going to do repeated stretched. And all that's going to do is stretch that over just a little bit, and now you can see all that overlapping that's happening. Okay, so that's at 0.7. All right, maybe what I want to do, let's just see what happens at 0.8. All right, I'm going to call it good there. I'm going to call it good there. So now let's look at what we created. So we're going to go into, but I'm going to go into realistic mode because that's where the money's at. So let's go into realistic mode and take a look at what we created. So Shift-Alt-P here and hit apply. Now this is going to take a minute to generate because the one drawback to this kind of faux Merrow edge is there are quite a few stitches in this design now. So it's got to generate a realistic preview of all of those stitches. And we're going to find out how many stitches we're talking about for our 2.5 inch patch, but let's look at it. So you see there, you see what the design looks like? It just has kind of an interesting edge to it, doesn't it? Okay, so that's what we want to see, a patch-like edge. Now you can't really tell a whole lot from this because we haven't actually stitched it out, but we definitely will get to that point. Okay, so let's look at how many stitches this generated. So we're going to go into simulator mode here now and see how many stitches we actually generated. So for our 2.5 inch patch, we generated 3,835 stitches. Okay, that's a good number of stitches. Good number of stitches. So let's close this out. All right, now you see right here where we've got these little triangles, right? What we're going to do is we're going to put in a little bit of underlay right there so that we don't see those as a gap in our finished embroidery. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we created all of these duplicates. Okay, so we're going to select this first piece here and go back up here, and we're in our selection tool, and we can see first of all how wide. So let's go back to, well, we can leave it in millimeters. That's fine. It says 67.874, and this is 67.874. Let's make them both identical. Okay. Didn't change a whole lot. Okay. So we'll go there. That looks good. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to start, first of all, let's call this marrow border. Okay, so that is the marrow border. And then the next thing we want to create is we want to create the placement stitch. Okay, so right here, we'll turn that one on and we'll turn our marrow border off for a moment, just for a moment. And so now this becomes our placement stitch. Okay. And let's give that a different color. So we're going to hit Shift in this blue. Any color is fine. So let's go ahead and turn back on our marrow border. We do need to see that. But let's go into outline mode. So View, Display Mode, Outline. And you see where that placement stitch is. Okay? That placement stitch is right there. So that is this piece right here. And that's pretty good. I am going to go ahead and choose Shift Control and drag it from the corner and just drag this out a little bit. Okay. Now, what I want to do is make sure that that border is totally inside the boundary of the marrow. And it is. Okay. So that part's good. All right. So that is going to work out just fine. So we're going to run our placement stitch. I think I might come in just a pinch. Not much, but just a little bit. Okay. So we're not quite center. We're a little bit off center on the placement stitch. Okay, but that's good. That's where we want to be. So now what I want to do is from that placement stitch, I want to create what we call a dynamic offset. All right. And so first of all, let's turn off our, well, though we can't really turn it off, but let's grab our placement stitch here. So we have our placement stitch and we're going to go to Path and we're going to choose Dynamic Offset. And what that allows us to do, you see here, we've got this little node. It allows us to click and drag dynamically, and we could see how we can come in. Now, let me back up here a little bit. So this, I added a dynamic offset to our placement stitch, and I really shouldn't have done that. All right, so let me go to Path and Object to Path. So that just got rid of my dynamic offset. I need to duplicate my placement stitch. Okay. And then we'll call it tack down stitch. Okay. So that's going to become my tack down. Now let's go ahead and add our dynamic offset. And let's click and drag. And I want it to be basically right here in the middle, right there in the middle of those little teepees, if you will. Okay. So once I'm satisfied with that, and maybe even move it up a little bit, just above center. Let's do that. It's slightly above center. Okay. So let's go ahead and choose Path and Object to Path. Okay. And then, let's see, let's just make sure we're good here. Yep. So that converted that back to a path. Perfect. All right. So that's our tack down stitch. So it's going to go placement, right? Tack down. And let's give our tack down a different color than our placement. Doesn't matter what color, just something that we could see. Okay, so you see here, that's a kind of a blue and that's kind of a reddish color. So this is so far so good. Now what I want to do is I want to add a stroke to our tack down stitch. Give it a width of something. And so we're going to go over here to stroke style. And first of all, we're going to go to a straight standard line. But now we're going to add a stroke style of 2. We'll try 2 millimeters. Might be just a touch wide. Nope. That's pretty good. So do you see something here? Do you notice that that 2 millimeter wide stroke totally covers our little teepee? Okay? And that's what we were looking to do. So kind of just look at the whole design. Yes, that all looks great. So we're good to go there. All right. So now that we've done that, let's go back over here. So we still have our tack down selected. We're still in our node tool, although that part doesn't really matter. I want to change this tack down and give it some type of param. So we're going to come up here to Extensions, InkStitch Params, and let's go ahead and give it a parameter. So what's it doing right now? Well, right now it's just doing a simple running stitch, okay? Which for a tack down stitch, that's fine. That's what we want it to do. So let's go ahead and just hit apply and quit. Yeah, we could go ahead and do that. We could, if we wanted to, we could come in here with our bean stitch. It says number of repeats, and we might do that. And what that does is it just kind of holds it down a little bit better. What it's doing is it's going back and forth twice, like this. So where this is different up here, when it says repeats, you'll see what it does. It'll do the tack down stitch, and then it'll come around and do the tack down stitch the opposite way. Okay, you see that? So that's all. That's the only difference there. So we could do it either way. All right. So I think maybe we'll go ahead and leave it that way, and we'll go ahead and choose apply and quit. Okay. So there we go. So now the next thing we need to do, we need one more step, and we're going to duplicate that tack down stitch that we just created. Okay. And we'll move that back. So the next thing is going to be our underlay. Okay, so now we're going to add an underlay. Now we've already added the 2mm border that we're looking for. So let's give it a different color. Let's see here. We'll make it a dark green. There we go. So for our underlay stitch, we're going to come back up here to InkStitch. We're going to choose params, but this time we're going to do something different. This time we're going to choose, instead of running stitch, we're going to choose zigzag stitch. And you'll see what it does. It gives us a little zigzag. Kind of sort of like a satin, but it's kind of what they call a simple satin. All right. And so let's go ahead and for repeats, let's just do one. So it's just going to come around and do just a little underlay. Okay. We can change this value to 0.4. This is what it currently is. You could leave it at that, but maybe we don't need quite that much. So I made it smaller. I meant to go bigger. So maybe we could go 0.6. Okay. You could kind of play with that a little bit. The default is 0.4, but you could play with that a little bit. But I'm going to say for this first example, let's try 0.6. That's 676 stitches just for that. If we did 0.4, let's see what the difference is. Maybe it's not even worth it. That's 1,000. Okay, so it does save us quite a few stitches between the two options. So we're going to go with that 0.6, and we maybe even be able to back that off even more, make it even a bigger gap. But let's just run with that right there for right now. Let's go ahead and choose apply and quit. Excellent. So now we are ready to take this and save it in a machine format. We'll go ahead and get rid of this ellipse because we don't actually need that. So we have our placement, tack down, underlay, and our marrow. Now we could go ahead and change all these colors if we wanted to back to, just to have it all one color. We could do that. Let's take a look at let's go ahead and take a look at it in simulator mode real quick. So we'll do that first. So we're going to pause it here and show you what's going on. So the first thing it's going to do is the machine is going to create that placement stitch, and it's going to pause, and then it's going to keep going, and it's going to create that tack down stitch. Okay, it's going to do that twice, one direction and then the other, and then we're going to do our simple satin or zigzag border. Okay, like so, and then we're going to come in and we're going to add our stitches. Now, the one thing that I am concerned about when we're stitching on a Ziploc bag is this too dense? And will our Ziploc bag pull away from the plastic Ziploc bag? Now, you say, well, why are you using a Ziploc bag? Well, truthfully, the reason I'm using a Ziploc bag is because it's just what I have on hand, and I think it could possibly work. I've seen videos where they take like regular painting plastic. It's either 3 mil or 4 mil. Comes in a huge giant roll for painters. But I've seen them where they've stitched the patch on the plastic, right? And then because this is so dense, it's really easy to tear the plastic when it's all done. And then they just take a lighter to the edge and melt the plastic just a little bit, and boom, there you go. You got your patch. But the question is this too dense of stitches to hold for a Ziploc bag? Is it too dense of stitches to hold for the big roll of plastic painter's tape? Don't know. I don't have any of those plastic painter's tape, but I've got plenty of Ziplocs laying around. So we're going to try and hoop up a Ziploc bag. It's going to be 2-ply, right? And then we'll stitch it out and test it. I mean, that's all you can do. Stitch it out and test it. All right. So there you go. So then that's just going to finish off there, and that will become our patch in theory. And so that patch border is 4,777 stitches. Okay. So there we go. There's all of that. Now, there is one thing that we may want to do, and that is in regards to our placement stitch. Let's go into params here and take a look at that, because I think we can add one extra value in the params. You can see this value right here. Now, not all embroidery machines will accept this. I believe mine probably will. I have a 6-needle embroidery machine, but basically what we're asking for it to do is to stop after this has completed stitching. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and choose apply and quit here. So we did change the parameter of that, okay? So this is what I want to do, just because I'm curious what's actually going to happen here. So you see there, we put our placement stitch in and we put our stop in. My question is, from a productivity standpoint, all of these things, the placement stitch, the tack down stitch, the underlay stitch, and the border, are all technically going to be stitched in the same color, ultimately, okay? So my question is, if I change this, will my machine respect that first stop position that I asked for? I don't really know. I really don't know. So, but the only way to test it out and to see is to go ahead and make them all one color. And the reason for that is because we don't want to go into the machine and change the color of each one of these. You know, that would kind of be a hassle. So, so I don't know. I think I just want to stitch it out first and see if it's going to be a problem, and then we can experiment a little bit more down the way. Now, there is one other thing that I might actually want to do, and let's go ahead and duplicate our placement stitch. So Control D, just for funsies, right here, right there, I want to run another stitch on top of my marrow edge, just for looks. So I'll explain this here when it makes a little bit more sense. But so Shift Control, and I'm just going to drag this down right about That's pretty darn close. Let's see if I can't go just a pinch. There we go. Just a pinch more. So you see that circle? It's going to go all the way around. Let's just see what that does. I don't really know what that's going to do, but this will be a contrasting color just for fun. Now, I do want to go into params because I want to change my stitch length. So you see here, it says the running stitch length is 2.5 millimeters, but maybe I want to do 4, something like that. I want a little bit wider stitch. So we'll go ahead and choose apply and quit. And I think I like this just like this for right now. So let's go ahead. So each one of these is going to be a separate color. Okay. And I don't know, we'll call this top stitch here. Top stitch. Okay. So now let's go ahead and save this. We'll do 2.5 inch patch. So we're going to save that as a InkScape file first. Okay. And then we will come back in and we'll save it as an embroidery file. So we need it to be a Brother PES format because I have a Brother PR600. So we'll go with that. Okay. Takes a second to save that PES file. So now that's saved. Now let's go do one more thing I want to show you. And that is to take a look at this file in this My Editor software. If you don't have this My Editor software, it's free. Definitely recommend that you download it because it allows us to take a sneak peek. First of all, we don't need that. Kind of forgot about that. It allows us to take a sneak peek at the design in Stitch View here. So you see here, this first thing here, you notice that it did respect that stop command in this software. So if I hit P, you can kind of see how this is going to stitch out, and you see that contrasting stitch on the top. I just thought that would be fun. You don't, like I say, you don't have to do that, but I thought that might be fun to do. So now the fun part is, you see what that border looks like. Let's stitch this out and see what we get here. So if you don't have this software, I highly recommend it. I really like the realistic preview. We can export designs. We can do some light stitch editing. You can combine 2 files into one. So if you have text, a monogram from one, and then you want to put the monogram right in the middle of this, you could do that. Of course, we can do all that in InkStitch, in InkScape, but it is a pretty good software to have. So I'm going to save this to my thumb drive, pull that PES file off, and we're going to go stitch this out and see how it fares here. So stay tuned for part 2 of the video where we actually stitch it out and see if we have decent results or we don't have decent results. Thanks for watching.